As soon as you put your list together of all the things you'd like to grow, it's time to think about a few other factors that may influence what or how much of each of these vegetables that you're going to be able to grow this year. I'm going to walk you through each of these 10 factors briefly here, but I'll do a deeper dive into each one of these areas in individual videos that you can find in the subject matter section. One of the first things to consider is how much space we have available for gardening. For example, if we have a 3-foot by 5-foot area available for gardening, it's pretty easy to see that there won't be enough room to grow a dozen tomato plants, 4 zucchini plants, and a half dozen pepper plants in that small a space. Which leads me to the next point. Next, we need to know how much space each of our plants needs. And while it may not make sense right now, we have to think about how much space our plants will need when they're fully grown as we lay out our garden now. See the seed packets or the plants that we buy from local greenhouses, and they will give us information on how close we should plant our plants and how much space there should be between rows. This information will give us an idea of how much space to allow for each of our plants. Now we need to understand what plants do best if we start them from seeds and what plants we should be buying from our local greenhouse. If you're just getting started, I would suggest leaning toward buying more plants from your local greenhouse. We need to know when it's safe to plant seeds or put plants out in our garden. Some vegetables prefer cool weather and can be planted in our gardens earlier in the season, while others need warm or hot weather and they may die if we put them out too early. If you're buying plants from your local greenhouse, they usually won't sell you plants until it's safe for you to plant them outside. Now we need to know what kind of soil we have in our gardens and whether it needs to be supplemented, fertilized, or boosted in some way to be able to increase our yields. You might think about taking a soil sample and having it tested by a testing lab or an extension service. Most states offer these services and they'll give you an idea of what you can do to improve the soil in your garden. There are several other factors that we simply can't control because they're based on where we live, but we have to understand them. These are the climate-related factors. How cold does it get in the wintertime where you are? The USDA publishes a hardiness zone map so you can see how cold it gets in your area. This map was recently updated in 2023, and you can use the link down below the video to get yourself a copy. How far are you from the equator? In general, the further north our garden is, the shorter our days are in the winter and the longer our days are in the summer. And as we go further north, the longer it takes for the things to warm up in the spring and the faster things start to cool off in the fall. My garden is about 30 miles northwest of Boston. If you live in an area that's warmer, you'll be able to do things sooner than I can, but if you live in a cooler area, then you might have to wait a little longer than I have to wait. How close are you to a large body of water like a lake or an ocean? That affects our humidity, how much rain we get, and how much temperatures change during the day. What elevation are we at? If we're in the Rocky Mountains, for example, the days get hotter and the nights get colder because we're at high altitude. But the Rockies are also very dry because there aren't any big bodies of water around. In New England, we're really close to the Atlantic Ocean, so we get lots of rain and have pretty high humidity during the summer. And then there's something called microclimates, which are local conditions that may vary from one town to the next, or even more locally, that may vary from one location to another in your own yard. Do we live in a valley or not? Are there trees that block the sun from some areas during parts of the day? Where does the snow melt first and where does it melt last? In fact, if we look at where we live, we'll probably notice that different parts of our yard get different amounts of sun depending on the season. These are the basic things we need to understand when we're thinking about and deciding where to plan and put our gardens. So I want you to at least understand the impact that these factors might have on what we're trying to grow. We want to be focused in on the vegetables that we want to grow, but we want to take into account which vegetables might grow better for us based on some of these other factors.